Good afternoon, and welcome to the Wednesday afternoon conference call with Trusts Unlimited. This is Jim George speaking. I'm the non-attorney spokesman and facilitator for Trusts Unlimited, and I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call. I hope if the things we discuss here today are of interest, you will be a regular subscriber to listen to our weekly podcasts. We have a lot of information that we want to share with you today, and we try to put together each week the information. Even though we bottom line it, we try to give you the information that's most relevant. Today is May 8th, 2024. We're in a good place with regard to the situation with the Iraqi dinar. We're going to get into that today. This is going to be a shorter call for two reasons. First, we're being inundated with requests for trusts, and we've really got to honor those requests. And second, we're having a very bad storm here, and the power's gone out periodically a few times, so I don't want to lose this call, so I kind of want to move quickly and try to get this information out before we have the possibility of another outage. First, by way of disclaimer, of course, Trusts Unlimited is not the purveyor of the dinar and these other currencies. We're not advocating the sale or purchase of these currencies, but as rather substantial currency holders ourselves, we're sharing with you the information we believe to be most relevant. Of course, what we're most interested in is the potential reinstitution of the dinar, and the month of May is a distinct possibility in our opinion. Now, for those who have been kind enough to listen to our calls, you know that for literally months I've been saying that there's no way they could pass a 3-year budget and negotiate all of these multinational contracts to rebuild their infrastructure on a promise. Therefore, in my opinion, these contracts were not consummated solely on the basis of the fact that they expected the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar. But in my opinion, they're operating on a rate, or at least a parameter, that a rate the new Iraqi exchange rate would fall into. And this perfect storm basically began in earnest on January 1st. January 1st of this year, the U.S. dollar is outlawed for use by the Iraqi citizen for the consumption of goods and services in country. So that, for me, and I've stated this before, was the point of no return. With regard to the reinstitution and revaluation of the Iraqi dinar, particularly those of us that have been involved in this for a long period of time, we've been told that we've been foolish, this is a scam, we've lost our money. My argument was basically twofold. First, because the currency was a sanctioned currency and a program rate and worth next to nothing, the downside was minimal, but the upside potentially huge. Why do I think the upside's huge? I think it's because where the Iraqi dinar is concerned, we've been in a perfect storm. What's going on in Iraq has never happened before. It will never happen again. Because two things have been going on simultaneously for decades, seemingly unrelated, but have a direct effect on the Iraqi dinar. First was the regime of Saddam Hussein. He literally destroyed the country and then tried to recover some of that lost wealth by invading Kuwait, which ended up putting the Iraqi dinar in a program rate and the removal of Saddam Hussein. So we have an Iraqi dinar, a currency worth next to nothing, that's in a sanctioned program rate. At the very same time, globally, we've been moving and transitioning away from the Western fiat currency to a Basel-compliant commodity-backed currency. So what that means for those of us that have currencies is that we will go to the bank to exchange a currency, and let's say we go in the month of May. We will go to the bank with a currency that we purchased for next to nothing and exchange it for a Basel IV compliant rate, meaning that the value of the currency will be readjusted based on the known natural resources of that country and their ability to bring those resources to market. That's why I say this has never happened before. It will never happen again. The closest thing to this was what happened in Kuwait. And what's going to happen with the Iraqi dinar will literally dwarf what happened with the Kuwaiti dinar. So let's talk a little bit about why I've come to this conclusion. I'm going to talk first about Soudani's activities because he has currently been on a worldwide tour to negotiate all kinds of contracts with other countries. He's been to the United States, China, Japan, several nations in Europe. Iraq now is even beginning to negotiate some things with Iran. Now, of course, Iran is not a good player, and they're never going to see the light, in my opinion, but they've begun to feel the heat. And so they've come to the table, and they're beginning to operate in good faith with Iraq. Now, the trip to the United States is particularly important because it wasn't about contracts to rebuild their infrastructure, although that's coming. It had to deal with meetings with the U.S. Treasury. And in my opinion, two things were discussed at those meetings. One was the presentation of all the banking reforms, successful banking reforms within Iraq. And second, again, this is my opinion, the presentation of either a new exchange rate or a parameter of where the exchange rate might fall. So in a way, this was almost a courtesy visit because Iraq, Soudani did not go to the U.S. Treasury hat in hand asking for anything. Iraq went to the U.S. Treasury as an equal to explain what the country has done and what's going to be happening in the very near future. This is backed up by some of the activities of the CBI and the governor of the CBI, Alak, who is working diligently to implement the monetary policies that were initially established by Shabibi. And Alak has recently stated that the nation state of Iraq is on the verge of going global. Well, as far as I'm concerned, he's referring and can only be referring to the revaluation of the Iraqi dinar globally. The CBI has also stated that they are in control of the black market or the street rate. Now, they've been operating with the dual currency situation, was a fairly wide spread. The official rate versus the street rate have slowly been merging. But when he says we are in control of the rate, what I think he's really saying is there will only be one rate because we have a new rate. It just has not been publicly disclosed. The other things that bode very well for the revaluation of the currency is the diversification of revenue that's beginning to take place. It's true that the major source of revenue remains the sale of oil, and they're producing about 1 million liters of oil per day, but some other things are going on too. First, there's substantial increase in their oil refining capabilities, which means they can utilize the oil domestically rather than having the refining done out of country, which means they can continue to build their own economy internally. We also see the exploitation of sulfur reserves, precious and industrial metals, and rare earth elements. Now, the metals and the elements are the result of thousands of years of that silt flowing down into Tigris-Euphrates Delta. And in addition, because it's in the Tigris-Euphrates Delta, it's much more easily mined than it would be in a place like Afghanistan, which is very rich in the rare earth minerals, but they're much more difficult to mine. But the other important thing, which is going to not necessarily match the revenue from oil, the sale of oil, but substantially diversify and increase the revenues, is the sulfur. Because the sale of their oil is based largely on the fact that Iraqi crude oil is very sweet, meaning it has a very low sulfur content. That's important because it's much more easily refined. and because it's more readily available for 2/3 of what refined oil is used for, the production of glass, plastics, textiles, and all of the nanotechnologies. But Iraq has some of the largest known sulfur reserves. So while their oil has low sulfur content, the nation also has large sulfur reserves. Why is this important? Because sulfur, of course, is the base ingredient in the production of sulfuric acid, which has countless industrial applications. So Iraq has it going. Iraq has it coming. And we haven't even touched on the agricultural possibilities that have not yet come to fruition. So all of this, in my opinion, means that they've really picked up speed. They're rounding the fourth turn. They're heading to the finish line to announce the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar. We can look at the action for the 2024 budget as well. The Council of Ministers has approved that budget. It'll now move to the Parliament as early as this week for debate and hopeful passage. Now, we know that Maliki and the coalition framework and the corrupt Iranian officials within the Iraqi government are going to do whatever they can to try to at least postpone, if not stop, the passage of the 2024 budget. But I think with each passing day, they become less and less relevant, and I don't think that they are going to be able to stop this. Also, within that 2024 budget, they've included funding to increase tourism, trade, and, of course, mining, which I mentioned. Now, everything I've discussed here cannot be accomplished with Iraq in a program rate. And I've also said that we're to the point now where Iraq is either going to have to reinstitute their currency, establish a new rate, or they will be a failed nation state. They will not be able to fund their budget. They will not be able to fund all of the international, multinational contracts for the rebuilding of their infrastructure, electric grid, water systems, road systems, new cities. All of that's for naught because they simply do not have the USD sufficiently to fund their budget and fund these contracts. They therefore have one option and one option only: reinstate their currency. Well, how is this going to happen? Well, there's a couple of options. One would be simply float the dinar on the Forex at, say, not necessarily 1-to-1 with the dollar, maybe at a premium over the dollar. The other option would be an initial fixed rate. I guess they could start at 1-to-1 with the dollar and it would move up quickly from there. Or they could, for example, go at 322, which is the rate of the dinar 20 years ago when it went into a program rate. Of course, the country is in substantially better shape than it was then, and they've had 20 years of inflation as well. So even 322 arguably is a laughable initial rate. It seems to me that north of $4 is where the Iraqi dinar would rest. And if you look at what happened with the Kuwaiti dinar, it went up over $7 before it dropped back down to basically, I think it was $3.46, somewhere in that range. So if you extrapolated from that, the Iraqi dinar could go to double digits easily before it would rest back down to the rate of north of $4. But in any event, whether they float it at a slight premium over the dollar, whether they float it at 1-to-1, or if they come out at a fixed rate of, say, 322, it's going to move up and it's going to move quickly. Now, it'll drop back down. You don't want to get caught with it going in the wrong direction. But something has to happen, and something has to happen soon, because they put everything in place. To remain in a program rate makes absolutely no sense at all, based on everything they've said, based on everything they've done. So this is where we are. Now, I'm going to very briefly touch on our trust package, because the situation with the Iraqi dinar created an opportunity for us years ago to market the trusted dinars for all of the reasons that we've repeatedly stated. But unfortunately, and we tried to avoid, and for most of the time that Trusts Unlimited has been doing these podcasts, we've avoided domestic political implications for all of this. But given what's gone on in the last 3 years, it simply cannot be ignored. We're in a very precarious situation right now because the government of the United States is at odds with the American people, and every poll proves it. We've been told repeatedly, ad nauseum, that the people in power right now are trying to save our democracy, which is a lie because we're not a democracy. We're a constitutional representative republic. What they're trying to do is create a one-party social democracy. And fortunately for us, they're failing miserably at this task, but unfortunately, we're all suffering as a result of their efforts. What we've witnessed over the last 3 years is a government that wants to stack the Supreme Court, end the Electoral College, end the Senate filibuster, stack the House by creating a national census that will include non-citizen illegals, and they want to amend or repeal the First, Second, Fourth, Fifth, and 10th Amendments. In addition, they want to summarily ignore Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution, which allows the American people to create our own interest-free currency, and instead, they want to not only preserve the Federal Reserve, a private corporation that creates money out of nothing and then quote-unquote lends it to us, they want to go to the next step and create a central bank digital currency where they can monitor all of our purchases, a grotesque violation of the Fourth Amendment. This is what we're dealing with. I don't think they're going to succeed at this. I think the American people are going to stand up and say no. But one of the things we can do, no matter what happens, is utilize every effort to preserve our privacy and our wealth for ourselves and our family. And one of the best ways to do that is to establish a family asset protection trust, whether you have currencies or not. Whether you have currencies or not, the trust provides privacy and anonymity. That's what you want. Whether you have currencies or not, the trust will allow you to avoid IRS scrutiny because the business activities will be occurring within the trust. You as the beneficiary will simply receive an income flow, which is easily explained to the federal government. This trust also has a special gift subtrust. If you happen to have currencies, this will not only allow you to gift pre-RV currencies to family members in order to avoid the federal gift tax, it will allow you to have complete control of the post-RV proceeds. And there are situations where you need to control that money for these individuals. But in addition to that, even if you're not a denarian, this trust will allow you to have friends and family members, business associates, utilize things like cars, homes, boats, etc., which will be owned by you through the trust. This trust will also allow you to avoid the cost and delay of probate, which basically opens up your entire estate and all of your heirs to the general public, and it will allow you to avoid the federal estate tax. Now, the federal estate tax right now, under current law, can be as much as 65% of your entire estate, in excess of $12 million. However, the Democrats want to reduce the federal estate tax exemption to $3 million, meaning that everything that you pass on to your heirs in excess of $3 million could be taxed as high as 65%. However, if your assets are in trust, not only is there no probate, you're exempt from the federal estate tax as well. The trust also protects you from future bad acts after you've acquired this wealth by the establishment of subtrusts, which isolate assets and therefore isolate litigation and your liabilities based on those subtrusts. So for all of these reasons, whether you're a denarian or not, it's a very good idea under the current situation in this country and the direction we seem to be headed to exercise your rights by establishing your family asset protection trust. If, however, you're a denarian, then you're going to want to establish this trust pre-RV, and you're running out of time. That's good news for those of us that have our trust. It's good news for all of us that have currencies, but it's very good news for people that have our trust and understand why it's critical to establish that trust pre-RV. I'm going to be ending this call because, as I said, there's a lot going on here, and the storm's cranking up again, so I hope we don't get cut off here before we get to the end. But I would strongly suggest that those of you that have not done so, contact us to get our initial no-obligation package. Has a lot of information about us, about these trusts, about the currencies. This trust package does contain everything you need if you wish to proceed with the establishment of your family asset protection trust, but you're under no obligation to do so. You can contact us either by email or phone. Our email address is trustsunlimitedllc@gmail.com. That's trusts with an S, unlimited, llc@gmail.com. And our phone service is 307-274-4122. Contact us by email or phone. We'll be happy to get our trust package out to you. Review the package. If you have any questions, contact us. We'll be happy to assist you. Again, if you wish to proceed, everything you need within the package. And if this does interest you, I would strongly suggest you move as quickly as possible because hopefully, from my perspective, time may well be of the essence. Now, our next call is scheduled for next Wednesday. Certainly, if something of dramatic nature were to happen between now and then, we'll try to get out an emergency email and schedule an emergency conference call. But failing that, we'll be back next Wednesday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Thanks for listening, everyone. Have a great week, and it looks like we all might be having a very good week, certainly a good month. Bye-bye.